Okay, good evening, colleagues. You are welcome to another wonderful day of academic exploration. Before we went for our break, just the short break before the Easter, and of course before the lockdown, I think we dealt with issues revolving around organizational environment. However, today we are going to touch on organizational control and power, which is, of course, chapter 13 of your textbook, and, of course, the unit 4 of your learner guide. All right. So, in terms of control, when we talk about control, what comes to your mind? What comes to your mind when we talk about control? Well, when we talk about control, it's all about putting a limit to certain action. Or when we talk about control, we're talking about regulating people, the way things are done. Take, for instance, the traffic light when we are driving on the highway. Without most of those traffic light regulating cars, you see that there will be a lot of confusion on the road because everybody will want to be the first to jump the traffic. So, as such, the traffic light you see on the road is a mechanism of control. So, when we talk about control within an organization, a social organization is an ordered arrangement of individual human interaction. That is a social organization. It's just an ordered arrangement of individual human interaction. So we have so many individuals with different character, with different behavior, with different ways of thinking, with different perception, with different perspectives, with different idiosyncrasy that they bring to the organization. So control is a process, or control processes enables us to manage most of those individual behaviors, individual idiosyncrasy, and keep every person's behavior within organizational conformity, or making every individual to conform to the rational plan of the organization. Can you see? So control helps us to harness the different behaviors within the organization towards the organization's main goal. Can you see? So without control, people will be in the organization behaving anyhow, behaving how they like, without focusing on the main organization's objective. Is that clear? That is, of course, from the perception of Tennybaum. We progress. The nature of control. What is the nature of management control? Well, before we talk about the nature of control or the nature of management control, we will have to just direct our focus to the functions of management. And if we want to do that, I think it would be very important for us to consider some of the functions of management first before we can actually have some perspective on managerial control. These are the functions of management. We have 4 functions there in terms of the functions of management. The first one there is control. And of course, the next one there is planning. And the next one is organizing. And the next one is to lead. Can you see? But out of these 4 managerial functions, the most important one, the most critical one, is control. Now let's just have a perspective on some of the management function here. We'll come to the one of planning. Planning is a process that includes defining goals, establishing strategy, and developing plans to coordinate activities within an organization. So one thing we must keep in mind is that as a manager advances from one hierarchy to the other, or from the lower hierarchy to a higher hierarchy, he does the work of planning more often than a younger manager. So they do this function more often as they move in terms of hierarchy. Then the next one is, of course, organizing. Organizing, which is part of where the term organization originated from, or to organize, is to determine what tasks are to be done within an organization, who is to do them, how the tasks are to be grouped, who reports to whom, and of course, decisions are to be made by who, or where decisions are to be made. Can you see? So that is organizing. And when we talk about organize, we talk about the individuals within the organization, and of course the structure, including the layout within an organization. So that is what we call organization is, and it's one very important managerial function. Then the next one there is, of course, to lead. Every manager is a leader, can you see? So the role of a manager is to lead the people. So leadership function is a function that includes motivating employees to achieve the target of the organization, and of course directing. One of the most important functions of a leader is direction. And managers, being leaders, always work with direction. They issue direction, how things should be done within an organization. And of course, selecting the most effective communication channels. Can you see? We have so many communication channels. It could be formal communication channel or informal communication channel. So managers always select the best communication channel, so that in fact there can be clear communication between members within the organization, and of course between the manager and the managees, of course. Then the next one is in terms of resolving conflict. One of the role of a manager in organization is in fact to resolve conflict within an organization. So it is very, very important that a manager resolve conflict within a given organization. And we'll come to the last one, which is of course control. What is the role of control? What does manager do when we say a manager is controlling activities within an organization? The manager monitors the performance of employees. And of course, that is why we have performance management or performance appraiser in different organizations. And of course, also, as the manager is managing the performance of employee, it is also managing the performance of the organization, because every organization have a target. And after some time, they evaluate what they are achieving within the organization and compare it with their initial target, can you see, to see whether they are attending. And of course, comparing actual performance with previous set goals, and of course, correcting deviations. If there is deviation, shortcomings in terms of getting to that target, they see how they can control it. So that is why control takes care of every other managerial function within an organization. So control is very, very important. So let's get back to our main slides where we are. So you can see the different managerial function here. The first one there, managers clarify objectives within an organization. And you see, managers clarify objective. And of course, we have spoken, I defined planning to you. We spoke about planning. And of course, we talked about organizing. And of course, directing, which is in fact one of the functions of leadership. And the most important one, you can see control. Control takes care of all these other managerial functions. So if an organization is effectively controlled, that will lead to a higher organizational performance. But if it is poorly controlled, of course, the organization may be detrimentally affected. So control is very, very important, very crucial in an organization. So control is very, very important. And I remember in one of my previous classes, one of my students raised a motion where he was arguing that control is not important in the 21st century, that in fact employees are very much aware and they should not just be unnecessarily controlled. In fact, they should be given free hand to do their work the way they should want to do it, you know. But the most important thing is that whether 21st century, whether 20th century, without control, people may abuse the opportunity given to them to do things the way they want to do. So certainly, managers have to set parameters within which people can function and work within an organization. And all those are part of managerial control. Is that clear? Thank you very much. All right. Elements of an organizational control. You can see the elements there. The first one is planning as an element of organizational control. Planning there, so number one there is objectives and targets. Setting of objectives and target is part of the planning. Then the next one there, number two, there's a establishing. That is establishing standard of performance. That is one aspect of control, one of the elements of control. Establishing standard of performance. How the organization or how people within the organization should perform. There should be a set standard. Can you see? Otherwise, things may go haywire or things may not be up to standard. You know, so every organization try to attain standard. Then the next one is monitoring actual performance. Can you see? After you have set standard and people are trying to achieve the target of in terms of the objective and the standard, you monitor the actual performance, whether the performance is meeting the target. Can you see? Then of course the next one, which is number 4, there is compare. You compare deviations. Can you see? Whether there is deviation between the actual performance and the initially set target, or the initially set objective, or the initially plan of the organization. Then compare the actual performance with the set target of the organization. And of course, if there is any deviation, if there is any variance, you try your possible best to correct, which is of course rectifying, the fifth one there, rectifying or correction of deviation, you know, in terms of the target you're trying to achieve within an organization. So on the basis of that, these are the 5 elements of control: planning, objectives and target, establishing standards of performance, number 3, monitoring actual performance, number 4 there, comparing deviations, and of course number 5, corrective actions. And when you do corrective action, certainly you send back the message of deviation to those who are planning, the planners, and of course, probably a new standard can be set. Then of course, that could be monitored. Then you compare whether you have also been able to meet the performance after trying to improve on the status quo. Then of course, if there is any deviation, rectifying, which is of course a corrective action, can also be implemented. Otherwise, if there's no deviation, then you will be satisfied that you have met your target. Even at times, there are instances where we exceed the set target. Can you see? So definitely our interest is to meet the target and, if possible, exceed those targets. So those are in terms of the elements of organizational control within organization. Now, forms of control. What are the different forms of control within an organization or within a country or society? We have different forms of control. The first one is legislation, standing order, policies and procedure. Like legislation, definitely the government make laws. The government make laws through the legislators. That becomes a legislation which we have to actually comply with. For instance, you can see the South African employment laws, and of course the Safety Act in South Africa, and of course the Labour Relations Act in South Africa. All these are legislations that business organizations have to abide by the rules of those legislation within South Africa if they really want to operate within South African society. And we'll have what is called standing orders. Standing orders are orders either executive orders promulgated either by the executive or the president or the governor of a state, or of course the provincial minister of a particular province on the rest. So those are standing orders, and of course those standing orders must be obeyed. For instance, you can see now we are within a period of lockdown, which was actually promulgated by the president, which is a standing order, and we are all asked to stay at home. So we are abiding by that standing order, so that at least we can minimize the spread of the coronavirus. So those are some of the things that comes to mind when we talk about standing orders. Then, of course, we have policies. Policies. Just like every government have their own policy. And just like governments have their policies, every organization also have policies. Policies are rules that govern a society, or policies are also rules and regulations that governs an organization. So without policy, people may not know the limit of operation. Can you see? So policy control how we perform, or who we relate to, or how we do things within an organization. So if you decide to break the policy, certainly you will face also the consequences of breaking a policy within an organization. So organizational policy is to direct behavior, what we can do and what we cannot do within that particular organization. And of course, procedure. What are the procedures of doing things? You hear in organization, they say this is our standing procedure. So that is the way we do things. It could be also the way, for instance, disciplinary procedure. That is how we discipline people within the organization. So we cannot bring new procedure. So we have to follow the laid down rule, which is why, for instance, in terms of discipline, every organization have their disciplinary codes. And those codes become the procedure of the organization if somebody should be disciplined. So there are so many procedures of manufacturing, procedures of attending to customers, procedures of receiving cash, procedures of customer service, and all the rest. So these are procedures, ways of doing things within an organization. Is that clear? All right, the next one is a performance standard of day-to-day operation, which is another form of control. That is our routine activities within an organization. What are the standard? What are the laid down standard? Can you see? Every organization must have a standard, a procedure. Without standard, we will be manufacturing things that are substandard. Can you see? That is where standardization comes. And in fact, in cost accounting, we have what we call standard costing, of course, which enable you to measure whether there is a variance between the plant standard and what you have actually manufactured, or in terms of your sales or whatever. So there is a performance standard, what is expected from employees within the organization to perform within a given standard. It could be in terms of quality. It could be in terms of packaging. It could be in terms of whatever they are selling or the product they are delivering to the public. So there must be a proper standard. Then the next one is health and safety consideration. It's a form of control. Can you see? And I spoke about South African Health and Safety Act, of course, which, of course, prompt us to actually take cognizance of where we work in terms of hygiene factors and in terms of so many other issues that may affect our health, such as affluence and so many hazardous materials that may affect the health of workers within a particular place. There are laid down rules. If you look at your Health and Safety Act, South African Health and Safety Act, which has so many rules that organizations have to follow in terms of maintaining the health of employees and, of course, workers and, of course, even visitors to that particular organization. So that is also a form of control, which is, of course, a kind of governmental control. But, of course, organizations have to abide by this kind of control. And, of course, we have organizational structure and role relationship. Structures within organization enables managers or enable managers to control people within that organization. That is the structure. Who report to who is accountable to a particular unit, who should be held responsible if something gets wrong in a particular section. So these are all control mechanisms, the structure and the role relationship, who report to who is accountable to who. So these are all forms of control within organization. And of course, we come through the next one, which is, of course, production system and technology. Can you see? The production system, how we produce within an organization, the layout of our plants, and of course, the technology that is used within our organization. Those are all control mechanisms. And of course, we must put that into perspective, So the production system within our organization regulates the things we do. That is why we spoke about also technology at times regulating what man does in an organization or the production system of an organization. So you have to follow those systems, and that is also part of control. It controls what we do within an organization. Then the next one is measurement of input. We measure what people contribute to an organization. It's a way of control. And of course, measurement of output. What is the unit contribution of an individual to the output of an organization? That is also a way of control. You see? And of course, we have processes and behavior. Behavior that is expected of someone in a particular organization. Those are forms of control. Can you see? Those are forms of control. Can you see? So people, for instance, in the banking industry in Nigeria, people are expected to wear like a coat, a suit with a tie. And that is their code. That is the way they like to dress, unlike South Africa, where people can wear their t-shirt and a jeans as their outfit. So people, different organizations have what they choose or what they like, So that is when it comes to issues of behavior. Then, of course, another form of control can also be recruitment. Can you see? During recruitment, we recruit people that can actually acclimatize to the behavior or the behavioral pattern of our organization, or those that will, really be compatible with what we do within our organization. That can also be a kind of control system, That can also be a kind of control system. And of course, selection of people. Can you see? Selection, one will say, okay, let's take the best out of the many that applied for a job. So from selection, we select those who can actually fit into our organization and, of course, leave the rest. Can you see? So that is one form of control. And, of course, we'll talk about socialization. Socialization actually includes induction of somebody within an organization. That is also a form of control, because during the period of induction, we try to indoctrinate a candidate or a new employee into our organization ways of doing things, our behavior, our behavioral norms, what we expect from them. And through these approaches or through these methods, we regulate their behavior to meet the organizational expectation or what is expected in our organization. And of course, training and development is also a form of control, because we train people to be able and capable to perform within our organization standard, or to perform their tasks within that particular organization. So that is also a form of control. Then, of course, the next one is organizational performance, such as total quality management program. This is also another form of control in terms of organizational performance. What we expect the organization to perform in terms of contributing to society. And of course, that will also be informed by our individual performance within that particular organization. So organizational performance, what the organization is expected to contribute to society, or what the organization is expected to deliver to their customer, becomes also a form of control, because you have to work to support the organization to meet up with the demands outside the organization in terms of meeting the demand of customers, in terms of meeting the mind of the government, in terms of meeting the demand of all stakeholders. Can you see? So that is why organizational performance is also a form of control. Is that clear? All right. We'll progress. Then the next one is strategies of control in organization. Strategies. What are the strategies of control in organization? The first one there says personal centralized control. That is one strategy in terms of control. The second one says bureaucratic control. And you remember we did something around bureaucracy. And the third one says output control in terms of strategy. And the fourth one says control through electronic surveillance. And of course, the fifth one says human resources management control. And the next one there says cultural control. Can you see? Cultural control. All right. Cultural control. Now let's just get a perspective, or let's just try to understand what these different control strategies is trying to allude to. When we talk about personal control is mostly used in small organizations, where in fact the owner is of course the manager of the organization, just like a sole proprietorship. Can you see? And under such control, it is actually carried out in terms of direct supervision of people's activities, centralized decision making, personal leadership. That is, the leader is the same person, founded upon ownership. The leadership is founded, he's the owner of the organization. Or founded upon charisma, it's charismatic, and of course, our technical expertise. And reward and punishment, reinforcing conformity to personal authority. So this person has the power of reward as well as punishment. Can you see? Which makes people to conform to his rules, to his dictates, and of course to his authority. Can you see? So that is personal centralized control in terms of control strategies within an organization. The next strategy there is bureaucratic control, and I have always we have already dealt with bureaucracy in your chapter 2, where I made you to understand that bureaucracy is normally for big organizations. Of course, like government organizations. That is why you see that most government organizations are bureaucratic in nature. And even the university system, sometimes you see hierarchy of supervisor, hierarchy of HODs, hierarchies of the deans, hierarchies of the deputy vice chancellors, hierarchies of the vice chancellor, and of course so many other administrative hierarchies. Can you see? So those are bureaucratic organizations, and of course bureaucratic control is another strategy of control. Under bureaucratic control, we have issues of what do you have there? Breaking down of of tasks into easily definable elements. Within a bureaucratic organization, tasks are broken into different units. Can you see? And that is why we have specialization in bureaucracy. Can you see? You have like finance department, you have purchase department, you have of course sales department, you have of course human resources department, you have different departments within a bureaucratic organization. Just as you have of course the horizontal department, you also have got hierarchical departments in terms of course, the supervisor, the HOD, the vice dean, the deans, of course, the DVC, and of course, up to the vice chancellor when it comes to the university. And when it comes to other organizations, you can have the supervisor, the manager, the senior manager, the directors, and of course, you can of course also have the vice presidents or the vice, the managing directors. Then before you get the CEO, is that clear? So those are when we talk about bureaucratic structure, and it's a form of control within organization. Formally specified method, procedures, and rules apply to the conduct of tasks. Can you see? Budgetary and standard cost variance accounting controls are used. The budget in a bureaucratic organization, the budget, and you have to work according to the budget. Can you see? And they measure the variance in terms of what you have expended. Technology designed to limit variation in conduct. Can you see? Technology is designed so that there can be standardization. Another characteristics of bureaucracy is standardization. Can you see? In conduct of tasks with respect to pace, sequence, possibly physical methods. Can you see? And of course, routine decision taking, delegated within prescribed limit. Can you see? Sometimes routine decision, how you do things, because the CEO cannot take all the decisions. So it is delegated to those below him to certain limit. Can you see? So you must know the limit that has been delegated to you. You cannot do more than your limit. Otherwise, you'll be in trouble under a bureaucratic organization. Then, of course, reward and punishment system reinforcing conformity. Can you see? If you fail to perform or if you fail to meet the target under bureaucracy, you will be punished. And if you exceed your target or if you are able to meet your target, you will be rewarded. So, a bureaucratic system is a system of reward and punishment. So, if you break the rules, you'll be disciplined and even dismissed. And if you achieve the rule, you'll be rewarded through promotion or something else. So that is exactly the bureaucratic organization. We'll progress. The next one is output control, which is also a control strategy. Output control involves jobs and unit design with responsibility to complete output. That is the jobs and units design with responsibility to complete output. Specification of output standard and target in terms of output control. This is specification. This is what they want of output and standard, that we want in terms of targets. Then, of course, use of responsibility accounting. Responsibility accounting is who is responsible to a particular job or a particular activities. Can you see? That person will be accountable to what he does within an organization. And of course, delegation of decision on operational matter. That is a kind of semi-autonomy. So people are kind of given autonomy in terms of what they do every day, their routine tasks. So which is within an output control strategy. So that is another form of control. Then the third one is reward and punishment linked to attainment of output target. So under bureaucratic, under output control, reward and punishment is normally linked to attainment or non-attainment of output target within an organization. Is that clear? Fantastic. Then we progress. Now we come to human resources management control. In terms of human resources management control, that is, the human resources management may use selection method to ensure that new employees or new recruits fit the profile or attitude or behavior or capability desired by the management of the organization. And of course, we have a training and development, which is designed to reinforce the desired behavior and, of course, the desired profile of a new employee. And of course, we have the third one there, which is assessment procedure and reward system used to encourage. Assessment includes performance assessment or performance evaluation, and reward system to encourage people to conform with organizational rules, standard, and performance target. Is that clear? Fantastic. We progress. Now we come to the next one, which is cultural control. Cultural control, that is development of employees' personal identification with management goals. Can you see, every organization have a culture. Culture can be also a mechanism to control people. Can you see? So it helps to develop employees' personal identification with management goals. So cultural control is also one strategy of control. Strong emphasis on the collective and mutually supportive character of the organization. Can you see? A strong emphasis on collective instead of individual and mutually supportive character of the organization. In other words, organization is seen as a family. Can you see? And new employees or employees are expected to harness their effort towards the objective and target of that particular family. Then the next one is employment characterized by security of tenure and progression within the organization. And of course, in terms of cultural control, if you're able to meet the cultural norms of a particular organization, definitely your job is secured. You have security within that organization, and of course, you become a tenured staff of that particular organization, and of course, progress in terms of promotion and in terms of within the hierarchy of the organization, get some promotion and recognition. And of course, one day you can move into the top management hierarchy of that particular organization as a result of blending into the culture of the organization. So it becomes a strategy of control. Then the next one is semi-autonomous working. Can you see? Which is in fact a few formal control, where of course we can of course also control through informal procedure instead of formality. We can also allow informal grouping within an organization so that of course they can use their informal blending to achieve some of the organization's target. And I think when we're dealing with organizational environment, we spoke about the formal and informal organization, and of course how we can of course also use the informal organization to achieve some of our targets within a formal organization. Is that clear? Fantastic. All right. So the next one there is we'll talk about characteristics of effective control system. What are the characteristics of effective control system? One of the main characteristics, one of the features of effective control system is that a control system should be understood by those involved in its operation. Can you see? Control system should be understood by those involved in its operations. That is to say, those who utilize the control system must understand the system itself. If they don't have proper knowledge or understanding of the system, certainly the control system becomes totally ineffective. Can you see? So the people that will use control system must understand the system itself. So there should be no ambiguity in terms of the control system within an organization. Members of the organization, those who will use control system, must be well acquainted with the system. Is that clear? Then the next one there is an effective control system must draw attention to the critical activities. An effective control system must draw attention to the critical activities which are important to the success of organization. Can you see? You must draw attention to the most important activities within an organization that will actually add value to the organization. Now the next one is an effective control system should conform with the structure of the organization. Can you see? And be related to decision center responsible for performance. So a control function must be compatible with the structure of the organization. And you know we have different structures within in terms of organization. We have the flat structure, we have the hierarchical structure, we have the matrix structure, we have the borderless structure. So a control system must be compatible with the structure of an organization. Is that clear? Fantastic. Okay, the next one is that an effective control system should be consistent with the objective of the activity to which it relates. Can you see? An effective control system should be consistent with the objective of the activities to which it relates in terms of performance improvement. So the objective must be compatible with what is expected in terms of performance. So it is consistent with the objective of the activity to which it relates with regards to performance. Because the essence, the most important thing that we want to achieve in terms of control system is performance. Can you see? In terms of standard and in terms of quantity. Can you see? So an effective control system should be consistent with the objective of the activities to which it relates. That is performance improvement. Then, of course, the next one there is report deviations from the desired standard of performance as quickly as possible. Like I told you, we have our target. And if there is any deviation, it must be detected on time and reported immediately. So an effective control system should be able to report deviation from the desired standard of performance as quickly as possible. Then, of course, the next one there is flexibility. A control system must be flexible. It must not just be static. Can you see? A control system must be flexible. It should not be rigid. Can you see? Flexibility so that, of course, we can check deviation and be able to kind of alter it a little bit, reevaluate it, change the system so that we can be able to change things, because the world is fluid. Things are ever changing. So if you have a rigid control system, you cannot adapt to changes. So control system must be flexible as much as possible. Then the next one is control system is subject to continual review. Just like tying to flexibility, it should be subject to continual review, evaluation. We evaluate the system, whether the system have yielded the desired result. If it is not yielding the desired result, it's no longer a system. It becomes an ineffective system. So an effective control system should be subject to continual review. Is that clear? Fantastic. All right. Now progress. The next topic on our slide there is power and management control. Power and management control. When we talk of power, what do we mean? Power simply means influence, being able to influence others. But of course, there are different types of power. There are also powers that you can derive from being in a particular authority within an organization. So power can be interpreted in terms of control and influence. Control, that is of course having the authority within an organization, and influence, being able to influence people without even having authority within an organization. That is also power. So power can be interpreted in terms of control and influence over the behavior of people with or without their consent. Can you see? Over the behavior of people with or without their consent. Can you see? So when we use influence, definitely we can influence people because they consent to it. But if it is within an organization, whether you like it or not, as far as you are working within that organization, you are forced to respect somebody in power because he has authority over you. Can you see? So power is a capacity or a potential. Can you see? Power is a capacity or a potential. Can you see? That is capacity to control someone, and of course a potential to influence someone. So a person can have power over you only if he or she controls something you desire. I see. Someone can have power over you if he is in charge of something that is so dear to you, something that you desire, something that you want. Can you see? So a person can only have power over you if he or she controls something you desire. That is according to Robbins. We'll progress. Types of authority and organization. What are the types of authority within an organization? And you know we have so many organizations, and we have actually dealt with that in our chapter 3 when we discuss about organization and its environment. So now we're talking about types of organization. What are the different types of organization that we can talk about? We have traditional organization. What is a traditional organization? In a traditional organization, authority is legitimized by custom. Can you see? Authority is legitimized by custom. A good example of a traditional organization is like authority that is derived from royalty. Can you see? For instance, the Queen of England. Can you see? That is a traditional organization. Or King Swati of Swaziland. That is also a kind of traditional power or traditional authority or traditional organization. Then, of course, for instance, the Pope also is a hierarchy, it's a custom. Yeah, you see? So that is also part of authority that is legitimized by custom. So these are all replicas of traditional organization. Now we'll come to the next one, which is, of course, charismatic organization. In charismatic organization, authority is legitimized by belief in the personal quality of a leader. Can you see? When you look at a leader, you say, no, there's something specific about this person that makes him so unique. Can you see? Despite the fact that sometimes we have tendencies to kind of criticize Adolf Hitler, for instance, but Adolf Hitler has got his own charisma. Can you see? That is why you see that he was able to move the Nazi in Germany. He has powerful influence. And I must tell you that when Adolf Hitler died, many of his generals died with him. Some took poison. Because they see Hitler as a mini god. They see an exceptional quality in Hitler himself. Despite the fact that the world perceived Hitler as one of the most dangerous human beings that ever lived this earth. But he's got charisma among his people, and people attribute certain special qualities or certain special behaviors to his character. And of course, when we talk about some people who are also charismatic from a benevolent point of view, we can talk of Mahatma Gandhi. He was able to turn himself from a well-learned lawyer to associate himself with the downtrodden in India. Can you see? So that is charisma. Then we can also talk of within South Africa, our local African environment, we can talk of a person like Nelson Mandela, who endured 27 years in jail. Can you see? For the sake of South Africa and for the sake of humanity. Can you see? So these are people with unique attributes. And in fact, most of the organizations they lead are perceived as charismatic organizations. You see? So that is what it is. Authority is legitimized by belief in the personal quality of the leader. On the basis of that, that organization that the leader is leading is perceived as a charismatic organization. Then the next one is legal, rational, bureaucratic organization. Under legal, rational, authority is based on the acceptance of the law of formal rules and procedures and on impersonal principles. So good of legal, rational organization in terms of authority is authority that is derived from the formal organizational structure or a bureaucratic organization. And you see, so that is legal, rational organization. Authority is based on the acceptance of the law of formal rules and procedures and on personal and on impersonal principles. Can you see? Impersonal principles. So these are three types of authorities and organization according to Weber. Power, involvement, and compliance. Power is the means by which members of the organization are induced to comply. Is that clear? Power is the means by which members of an organization are induced to comply or become involved with the organization. Is that clear? Now, on the basis of that, we have different forms of power. For instance, we have coercive power, we have remunerative power, and of course, we have normative power. Normative power. And of course, when we talk about normative power, it's lay down rules or ways of behavior. For instance, in church, that can be a kind of a normative power, the norms within a particular group of people. And when we talk about coercive power, people abide in terms of forms of involvement. People abide or people comply to coercive power through what we call alienated involvement. Can you see? They are involved not because they want to be involved, but because they fear of the coercion, they fear of the punishment they will get from the person who is exercising a coercive power. And of course, the next one is remunerative power. Can you see? So in terms of remunerative power, people comply, involvement, people are involved because they calculate what they will benefit from respecting or from obeying or complying to the person exercising power. The person has the resources to part to those who will abide by his rules. Then we have, of course, the normative. The normative, the form of involvement is moral. Can you see? Like, for instance, people normally say, my pastor says, or people normally say, the Pope says, or people normally say, of course, my tradition says. Those are norms. Can you see? So it becomes normative, laid down rules or ways of behavior of giving a group of people, either a church, either a cultural group, or what have you. So, and of course, the form of involvement there is, of course, a moral involvement. Okay, you see, you are involved because of morals, not because you are expected any resources or reward from being involved, but because you just felt it is morally right for you to be involved in that particular, under that particular influence or power. Is that clear? Fantastic. Now, if you look at the structure there, organizational relationship and compliance, you can see there kind of involvement and, of course, kind of power. Then, of course, down there you can see congruent relationship. Can you see? So, what are you seeing in that structure? If you look at coercive kind of power, you can see that it's under alienative involvement, which is number 1 there. Can you see? Then when you progress, you talk about remunerative power. Remunerative power comes under number 5 there, which is calculative involvement. Then when you talk about normative power, what it comes under number 9 there, which is of course moral power. So this is the congruent in terms of a relationship, how this relates. So coercive people are involved because they fear that if they don't comply, they may receive punishment. Now, those in terms of remunerative power, they are involved because they expect that there will be money will be given to them. So calculative, they calculate the reward that they will get. And in terms of normative, they do it for moral obligation. Okay, moral obligation to my God because my pastor says that, or because my bishop says that, or because my pope says that. So that is the diagram there for you. So look at the diagram and see where they comply. And this kind of diagram can appear in your examination where you may be asked to balance the power and involvement in terms of compliance. Is that clear? Fantastic. All right, we'll progress. Then perspectives of organizational power. Perspectives of organizational power. Power operates at 3 different levels. Okay, you see, power operates at 3 different levels. The first one there is level of society. In terms of level of society, that is the capacity to influence others in society. Can you see? To influence others in society. For instance, within South Africa, we can say a person like Malema has a big influence, He can influence people's mind. Also, of course, he can influence people within society. So that is a kind of societal influence. And of course, in terms of also influencing society, the president of a country can also have some positive influence on society. Then, of course, we'll talk about the level of organization structure and culture. That is, of course, this kind of power work within position which enable people to shape what others do. For instance, your manager or your CEOs, they have this kind of power within the level of organization structure, and they can shape and influence what you do within that particular organization. The next one there is interpersonal level. Interpersonal level of power, that is the power to get people to do things they would not otherwise do. Can you see? The power, interpersonal level, the power to get people to do things they would not otherwise do. Can you see? That is, of course, this power may or may not be exercised through the former organizational structure, but because you wield certain influence, certain special trait that has made you to make people to do things they would not have done ordinarily. Can you see? So these are the 3 perspectives of organizational power. Power that operates at the level of society, power that operates at the level of organizational structure and cultures, and of course power that operates at the level of interpersonal level between two individuals without formal authority or whatever, within an organization. All right. Pluralistic approach to power. What are the when we talk about pluralistic approach to power? That is to say, there is no one specific approach. Can you see? To power. We cannot say that we are using only reward power. There is only one power as reward power, or there is only coercive power, or there is only legitimate power, or there is only referent power, or there is only expert power. So there are so many approaches, so many variants of power within an organization. So French and Raven see social power as based on 5 sources of leadership influence. The first one there he called reward power. That is somebody who has the power to reward. Can you see? Reward or punish. Can you see? That is reward power. He has the resources to reward those who comply and punish those who fail to comply. Can you see? And of course, we have also coercive power. Power by threat. Can you see? Power by threat, for instance, if you don't do this, you go to jail. And you see, that is coercive power. And you see, so people comply. So this is another approach of power. Then, of course, legitimate power. Legitimate power is the power that you acquire as a result of being a manager within an organization. Or, of course, legitimate power can also be the power acquired by the president of a nation. So these are different kind of power that we're talking about. Then, in fact, we'll have the next one, which is, of course, referent power. Referent power is to cultivate the respect and admiration of followers. Can you see? If you have referent power, followers decided to develop respect and admiration for you because there are certain characteristics about you which they like. So that becomes a referent power. So they always reference you, whenever they talk, like this particular person. Even in South Africa, you can see how people always reference Nelson Mandela, even after some years of his departure to the world beyond. People still respect him. People still remember him. People still say, this is not what Tata told us. Can you see? Or this is what Tata told us. So they still refer to him. That is referent power. Then, of course, we have